I was floating in my own pool when a 17-year-old kid in designer sneakers told me to get out, said I was trespassing on HOA property, and promised his mother would ruin my life. 3 days later, that same kid was in handcuffs, screaming my name, while the entire neighborhood watched in silence. And the woman who thought she ran this community was learning in real time what real power actually looks like. Let me rewind, because none of this started at the pool. 6 months earlier, I moved into Willowbrook Estates, one of those picture-perfect suburban neighborhoods where the grass is always green, the mailboxes match, and the HOA rulebook is thicker than most people's tax returns. I'd just taken a new position that required relocation, and on paper, this place looked ideal. Quiet streets, low crime, high property values. The kind of neighborhood where nothing ever really happens. What I didn't realize was that I wasn't moving into a community. I was moving into a kingdom, and Karen Mitchell was the queen. I met her on my 3rd day. She knocked on my door holding a basket of muffins and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Blonde highlights, expensive yoga pants, posture like she was standing on a stage even though we were on my porch. "Welcome to Willowbrook Estates," she said, voice sweet enough to rot your teeth. "I'm Karen, the HOA president. I just wanted to make sure you received your welcome packet." I had, all 47 pages of it. Before I could say anything else, she glanced over my shoulder toward the street. "I also noticed your moving truck blocked the Hendersons' driveway for about 20 minutes yesterday. Just a friendly reminder that we have very strict parking regulations. I'd hate for you to receive a citation your first week." A citation for unloading my life. I smiled politely and told her I'd keep that in mind. Years in my line of work have taught me how to read people, and Karen was an open book. Control-obsessed, power-hungry, the kind of person who needed to establish dominance immediately. What I didn't tell her, what I didn't tell anyone, was what I actually did for a living. When people know your title, they act differently. They perform. They lie. I didn't want that. I wanted to be just another neighbor. So when anyone asked, I kept it vague. Public service, county work. Technically true. That choice would come back to haunt me and save me. I met Karen's son Brandon about a week later, 17 years old, brand new BMW, the kind of kid who walked like the ground owed him something. The first time I dealt with him was at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday when his music was rattling my windows. I walked over, knocked, asked politely if he could turn it down. He looked me up and down like I was something he'd scraped off his shoe. "Dude, it's not even that late," he said, not touching the volume. "Besides, my mom's the HOA president. We can do whatever we want." That sentence would echo in my head for months. The Mitchells had turned the HOA into their personal enforcement arm. Karen had been president for 3 years, and during that time she'd stacked the board with people who were either terrified of her or owed her favors. Every meeting was a performance. Rules were enforced selectively depending on whether Karen liked you. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly widow 3 doors down, was fined $200 because her garden gnomes violated the aesthetic standards in Section 14.3 of the bylaws. Those gnomes had been there for 15 years. When Mrs. Patterson protested, Karen threatened daily inspections until she found more violations. The Johnsons, a young couple with a newborn, got fined $500 because their 10-year-old Honda was unsightly and lowered property values. Karen had measured the parking position herself. 3 inches over the line. 3 inches. Meanwhile, Brandon parked across 2 spaces, threw parties until dawn, borrowed tools without asking, and returned them broken, if he returned them at all. Anytime someone complained, Karen appeared like a designer-clad dragon, accusing them of harassment and threatening legal action. The neighborhood learned quickly. People avoided Karen. Conversations stopped when she walked by. Curtains twitched, doors closed. Everyone complied, repainted houses, removed basketball hoops, took down Christmas decorations exactly on January 2nd just to stay off her radar. I tried to stay neutral. I documented things, took photos, saved messages, but I didn't engage. My job was demanding enough without neighborhood politics. Then came the pool. That Saturday afternoon was perfect. Sun out, water cool, cold beer in my hand. For the first time all week I relaxed. Then I heard sneakers screeching on concrete. "Hey, old man," a voice called out. "You need to get out, now." I opened one eye. Brandon stood at the edge of my pool, arms crossed, smirk locked in place. "This is HOA property," he said. "My mom runs this neighborhood, so unless you want problems, I suggest you leave." I almost laughed. I told him calmly that this was my property, my pool, my house. He told me I was lying, said his mom showed him the maps. I told him to leave, nicely, once. His phone was out immediately. "You're done," he said. "My mom is going to destroy you." She arrived in under 5 minutes, which told me everything I needed to know. Karen came through my side gate like a hurricane, phone in hand, fury already loaded. According to her HOA maps, my pool was community property. She didn't care about my deed, my survey, my permits. She threatened fines in the thousands. Towing my work truck. An emergency HOA meeting. Neighbors watched from behind glass, terrified. For the first time, I felt something crack. That night, Mrs. Patterson knocked on my door. She was shaking, holding a casserole dish like a shield. Over the next 2 hours, she told me everything. The fines, the threats, skipping medication to pay HOA penalties. She wasn't the only one. Over the next few days, more neighbors came forward quietly, always checking over their shoulders. Stories of vandalism blamed on them, of Brandon harassing their kids, of Karen threatening inspections, lawsuits, financial ruin. I was angry, and then I was tired. There was a moment late one night, sitting alone in my kitchen, staring at the footage I'd collected, when I wondered if I should just sell the house and walk away. Let them win. Start over somewhere else. Maybe this was my fault for not fitting in, for not playing along. Then Friday happened. I came home late to find my backyard trashed, beer bottles floating in my pool, furniture overturned, my grill shoved into the water. Security footage showed Brandon and 20 kids jumping my fence and destroying everything. Mrs. Patterson had watched it happen. She'd wanted to call the police. Karen had laughed and told her boys would be boys. Something inside me went cold. Saturday morning I filed reports, not with the HOA, with my office. I made calls. I pulled records. By Sunday night, everything was ready. Karen thought she'd called an emergency HOA meeting to destroy me. She had no idea she'd scheduled her own trial. The community center was packed. Karen sat at the front, power suit perfect, Brandon smirking in the front row, phone already recording. She accused me of harassment, of threatening her son, of occupying HOA property. She demanded $15,000 in fines and forced removal from the community. When she finished, she smiled like she'd already won. I stood up slowly. I showed the deed, the survey, the zoning confirmation. I played the footage. Brandon trespassing, vandalizing, drinking underage. Neighbors stood, one by one, voices shaking, then growing stronger. Then I placed my badge on the table. "I'm Sheriff Michael Reeves," I said, "and you're both in serious trouble." Brandon lost it. He shoved me. That was the moment everything ended. Deputies came in. Handcuffs clicked. Karen screamed. The board voted unanimously to remove her. The room erupted, not in celebration, but in release. As Brandon was led out, kicking and crying, Karen stared at me like she'd finally seen the truth. She never had power. She just had fear. And fear only works until someone stops being afraid. Sometimes the people who scream the loudest about authority have none at all.